Absolutely. And one of the other things too that I am going to be mentioning is that this session will be recorded. I will be sending it out to Vic. And if you guys have any questions about it, or if you would like it to be, if you'd like to see it or have the file, please reach out to myself, Azim, or Vic, and we'll be more than happy to share that with you. So I'm going to pass this on to my co-host, Azim, and floor is yours, Azim.
All right, thanks, Hisham. So I'm going to keep it really short. It's a privilege really to be asked to introduce our speaker for today. Most of you actually already know Vic, but for those that don't, or for those little that don't, Vic graduated with multiple degrees in both business and public administration. He's been in practice for over 25 years. Dude, you're old, man.
Yeah, you're right there with me, buddy.
I know I am. And as a president and CEO of Jindal Financial Group, Dentistry Disrupted, his primary focus has been helping, and let me say that very clearly, helping thousands of dentists across Canada. How? His many talents, which include optimizing best strategies for growth, using a proactive approach when it comes to all aspects of business in dentistry. Those aspects include, and he'll talk about some of those today, practice management, tax planning, investment, and insurance. He's written several articles on these topics, and he's appeared as a guest speaker for many professional study clubs. So to be honest, there's very few people I can honestly say I've met over 15 years who are truly just straight up intelligent, knowledgeable in their field, but at the same time, humble, kind, and genuinely willing to help others. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend and mentor, Vic Jindal. It's all yours, buddy.
Thank you so much, guys. It is awesome to be with you guys. When Hisha said, hey, we want to do a Zoom chat, and we'd like to have maybe 10, 20 people, maybe just some of the local crew get on, and we can throw around a few ideas. I'm looking at the screen here right now, and there's about 225 of you that have logged in so far. So a big thank you for taking your Friday afternoon to come out and talk today. Today's meant to be super, super chill. I have no slides for you today. All those slides and the deeper dive of what everything I'm going to talk about today is going to be shared again on April the 20th. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Right now we're getting, we've literally had thousands and thousands of you, so many of you that are logged in today, I've chatted with or scheduled to talk to in the coming days. And there is an unbelievable amount of fear, panic, anxiety, and I'm going to say excitement all mixed in at the same time. The range of emotions is unprecedented for so many of you. And that's not just the dentist, that is your team members. Those are the suppliers. Those are your landlords. That is your patients. Every single person around the world, 7 billion of us are affected by this, again, all over the world. I'm going to take you guys back a little bit. So today, as I said, I'm going to try and share a little bit of history lesson, and I want to just start touching upon where we go when we emerge out of this, which we definitely will. I'm going to take you back to 4 weeks ago, to March the 3rd, 2020. And if everybody remembers 4 weeks ago, it seems like a lifetime ago right now. But back then, I remember that day on March the 3rd, and my team and I had just finished Rsps season. We were giving each other high fives. We're like, great, everybody's looked after. Everybody's got their tax plan in place for 2020. Everybody was having pretty much a record year. All of you, when you looked at your practice, you looked at your portfolio, you looked at your real estate, you looked at your go-forward plans, everybody was excited, right? And it's been a phenomenal decade of growth around the world. And here we are now on Friday, April 3rd, 30 days later, and the whole world has changed. And it's upside down. And we are on lockdown. When was the last time you ever heard of planet Earth, all 7 billion of us, on lockdown? And when have you ever even imagined in this lifetime that we wouldn't be able to physically see each other? And we'd have to, and the reason for us to be on a platform like this and distance ourselves is to save lives, right? And people out there are dying. I've had personal friends and clients that have already suffered through this. I have a lot of friends and clients right now that are going through it right now. The range of description when I have the chance to talk to them ranges from, I feel like I have acid being poured down my throat. I've never had a fever so bad in my life. I get hot and cold. Some would rather, they just can't take it. it's just so bad. I mean, for those of you that have watched Chris Cuomo on CNN some of these nights, of course, the governor's brother, and of course, to watch him even go through it. And his number one fear when he shared what happened to him is he said, I'll fight it. It doesn't matter whether I get through this myself, but he said, I worry about my family, my friends, and all the people that I may have infected. Good news, his family's fine. But this is the range of emotions that we're all facing. So what happens when we go through something like this? So I'm going to take you back through, I mean, you've read or you've seen the Spanish flu, you've seen all these different economic events, and you've seen, obviously, on top of economic events, social events and healthcare events like MERS and SARS and all those things. I'm not going to get into, obviously, the epidemiology of what this thing is, but all we know is this 20 times more contagious than anything else that we've ever faced. And this is the first time that we as human beings are really faced with this level of contagion going across the planet. If we look now at what happens, again, specifically when we as sitting here in Canada get faced with something like this, most people weren't prepared. You had the people, of course, that were the early adopters, I'm going to say, to COVID crisis, and they ran, of course, to Costco, and they loaded up, of course, on the proverbial toilet paper and canned goods and everything. And a lot of us, I know at that time on the early onset, were saying, wow, you know, like, you're really loading up over there. Can it really get that bad here in Canada, and protected Canada with 37 million of us and a great healthcare system? How can it get so bad? Yet, here we are. So what do people do when they panic? They think about a lot of things. So the first thing that we've had a flood of calls and emails on and discussions on is, am I going to be okay? And I'm not saying necessarily from the healthcare standpoint, but how do I pay my debt? How do I take care of my kids? How do I take care of my practice if I have a practice? Those of you, I know there's a lot of students I see here that have also logged on from Detroit and Toronto and right here in Western. And I remember 4 weeks ago, we were talking about, hey, polish up your CV and get ready to apply for your associateship. And here that's all on pause. And you're wondering, when do you finish your requirements and when do you graduate? And is there going to be a job waiting for you? A lot of you are getting ready to go on July the 2nd to start up and excited for your dental journey to begin. Nothing's changed. Nothing's going away in that context. All of you that are graduating, all of you that currently have practices, all of you that are associating, these patients aren't going anywhere. They're all there. They're at home right now. And the relationships that you've built as practice owners specifically and associates specifically, those patients they're going to need and they're going to want their continued dental care. And you guys are on the front line of it. I'm going to suggest to you there's 3 kinds of patients. So I'm going to jump right to this and then roll back. There's going to be 3 things that your patients or the people you interact with in any way, even if they're not dental patients, they're going to go through 3 different thoughts. When is it going to be safe for me to go back to see my dental professional? And you guys are wondering, is there going to be enough PPE equipment? You're wondering if there's going to be a shortage of 95 masks and face shields. And gosh, God only knows what the IPAC guidelines or the new IPAC guidelines are going to look like when all this returns to normal. But there is going to be the first cohort of patients that are going to be just scared. And they're going to say, hey, why don't I just keep isolating instead of being close proximity to my healthcare practitioner? And that is a reality. There's going to be people that worry. But they'll get over that worry. They always do. And it's up to you to demonstrate to them how seriously and how important you take this. And it's up to each of you to demonstrate that through video, through discussions, through emails, through high-level communication to say, hey, you know what? Your safety is our number 1 priority, which it is, but you have to communicate it because they're not going to know the difference until you show and share. The second patient that is going to be out there is going to be the one that says, hey, I'm going to talk about the non-emerge patient. That patient comes back and says, I'm ready to go. I feel good, I feel safe, but I need some help right now on paying for this implant, this recall, my Invisalign, my anything. They're just going to need some financial assistance. And it'll be up to you, for those of you that have never collected assignment before, to say, hey, do I now turn into an assignment office? Do I help put some of our clients on payment plans. There's a dentist and a few dentists here in Canada now have started membership-based services now where you pay as a member and you get X amount of dentistry within it. Work with your patients, work with your team, work with your suppliers, of course, work with your bankers. Like everybody is here financially to try and make it work, but you will have to definitely with a certain, again, that second cohort, work with them to help them through the financial aspects of still getting the treatment plan and the care that they need and want, but they can't afford it. There's going to be a third kind of cohort over there, and they're going to be the people that they're least affected by this financial downturn, and they feel good and safe in order to proceed. It's interesting when you look around out there again over there of how many Canadians specifically are financially somewhat insulated from this. We're all affected, but financially they're quite insulated, and they're going to go about their business to continue to do their crowns and their implants and their ortho and their everything. It will just be business as usual when you open up. There's an idea out there that there's going to be this pent-up demand and that thousands of your patients will flood back in if we hypothetically say that you're going to reopen the doors on sometime in the month of June. And I'm going to just give you a personal opinion that I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that there's going to be this flood of pent-up demand. The people that need emerges are getting them right now. And I think the other people are just going to be a little bit on pause. So that's okay. Again, if you remember that the patients aren't going anywhere, and if you stay close and touch them right now, as you go through this process, they'll be back to continue to work with you, and that won't change. I'm going to take you guys to 1982. And in 1982, you saw, I'm going to talk about a few economic events, but I'll talk about 82 in specific. The world of the 70s was really good. People were buying their first house, their first station wagon. You know, the boomers were feeling really economically like they were growing and picking up a lot of growth across North America. In 1982, the market got whacked. Interest rates had skyrocketed up to that 19% range. People couldn't afford their mortgages anymore. They'd taken a tremendous amount of debt. And the stock market fell about 30%. And I'm going to use a number. If you had $100,000, you were down to $70,000 pretty fast. And you had three choices. You could say, I'm going to panic and sell along the way and cash out and put my money in my mattress. I can hold. And if I understand that my assets are my health, my family, my dental practice, my portfolio, my home, all of these things, if you add up all of your assets, and I'm going to stress again, your health and your family and your mental and physical well-being, number one asset you have, then how long did it take for it to get back to normal? It's about 18 months. And if you were sitting in the depths of when this economic downturn happened in 1982, you felt like it was never going to get better. There was not going to be any normal for you ever again. You just only saw negative news, whether you read it, you tuned into it, in any context, in any way. So we got through that. And through 84, 85, 86, and leading up to 87, life was good again. Really, really good again. 1987, we had this event called Black Monday. Happened on October the 20th, 1987. And interest rates had come down back back around that time. You were dealing with about 10, 11% interest rates, not as bad as 1920. But the market fell again. It fell another 30%. Happened really fast. And how long did that last? About 3 months. I can tell you in 87, though, on Black Monday, people thought it was going to be forever. And if you blinked, you missed it. And through 88 and going up to 1993, life was good again. Fell again in 93. It's about 6 months. Wasn't that long, but it felt like it was going to be forever. After that, when you got into the mid-90s, and I remember the mid-90s vividly in the sense of there's technology. I mean, if anybody ever even imagined in 1995, 1996 that 270 people would be on a webinar together on a Friday afternoon and not at work, no one would believe it. But here we are technologically. The invention and the growth of, at that time, Nortel and BlackBerry and people's first mobile device that they could actually communicate with changed the world. We had another meltdown. It was deep, it was ferocious. Some companies, again, negative 35%. And it felt like it was going to be forever, and it wasn't. Recovered within 2 years. And it's funny, each time we had a recovery, people very quickly forgot about all of the past pain. Then you got through this wonderful point through 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, getting into 2008, where people were ferocious. Expansion of dental practices, expansion of equipment, expansion of the economy, expansion of homes like crazy, construction, resale, furniture, TVs, you name it. We're talking about the consumption of global goods never before seen in history. And of course, we had then the Great Recession kick in and start in 2008. And it was bad. I mean, we're talking about a recession so deep, and we call it the Great Recession because that for sure was being compared to the Great Depression of the 1920s. And they said, that's it. Like, this is the big one now. And there will be no recovery. People talked about 10 years, 20 years, things that just seemed so dark. And 2 years later, full recovery. Life is back to normal. And we continued on in arguably the greatest period of now economic growth in human history again. If we thought it was good in that period, it got way better in the next years, 2011, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 4 weeks ago, 30 days ago. So here we are now, right? What's happened? And I'm going to talk about the economy, and I'm going to talk about some stocks, and then I'm going to talk about your practices. So if you turn on BNN or Bloomberg TV or open any stock ticker, you're going to see that the stock market's dropped off from 29,000 points to 19,000 points and hovering up and down from there. You're seeing the most violent swings in the economy. You're seeing a company like Carnival Cruise Lines drop from $71 with full boats down to $8. You're seeing Disney drop at ferocious levels, as if people will never go back to the Magic Kingdom and visit Mickey Mouse. You're seeing really, really unbelievable safe companies like our financial institutions drop like flies. Why dropping so much? Panic selling. The more people that panic and the more people that sell, the more the price will go down. Looking at a period of time where things are going to get worse before they get better. Unfortunately, we believe that over here as you look at the COVID curve and you look at the potential death toll that we're going to face here in North America. And people are going to continue to be very pessimistic. And you have to look a little bit past this point, even though it's going to get really bad coming up, and look ahead to what is now the opportunities, if you so look to see the pros of all this. I was looking at air quality story over here on the air quality in India. And in the last 30 days, you've seen the poisonous air turn into some of the cleanest air very, very, very fast. You're seeing people taking cooking lessons with their kids and families. You're seeing people getting out and exercising. The never-ending to-do list is starting to get somewhat done. People are reading, they're connecting with each other. Social distancing isn't meaning you're becoming distant. In fact, so many of us together over here, the conversations and the meetings we've had have brought us even closer together. So economically, we will 100% come out of it. COVID, of course, will pass as an event. We'll build up our herd immunity. We hopefully will have a vaccine at some point in time, sooner rather than later. And just like everything else I just described to you, this will also be an event that we all experience and live through, but it's not forever. This is not our new norm. If we look at, there's been some questions about, are we going to be in a recession? We are actually in a recession now. We're here. You cannot, as a United States government, borrow $2.2 trillion of money, and here in Canada over $100 billion, and not have a financial impact and consequence to that. The bank rates in the United States are now down to the whopping 0%, and here in Canada, we're just slightly above zero. And that is great to help people get through on the lifeline that they need right now with loan extensions and financing extensions and all that help, because of course, everybody's income is seized up. This is what we call a black swan event. And I'm going to say it's not a black swan event for the economy. It's a black swan event for human history, because no one truly ever contemplated how bad it would be, or really the closure of planet Earth right now. We don't know how long. That's another question. How long is this going to go on? I know the RCDSO has kind of said so far, as I believe they haven't updated that, so it's still back to work, I think sometime in April, May, and we don't know, right? Best guess right now, if you look at the curve and you look at epidemiologists' opinions on it, we're looking at probably earliest state June 1. I think it's probably naive to say anybody's going back to work in any meaningful capacity through April or May. And that's the best thing that one can do in order to, again, keep everybody healthy. It shocks me still how many people aren't taking this seriously. And that is just, it's just appalling to know that people don't believe what's actually going on out there. What's going to happen to real estate? So it's already started right now. You're seeing a very small regression in real estate prices across the country. Some places a lot more than others, of course. I do want to point to Alberta in a moment for those of you who are tuning in from Alberta, if there are a few people from that province. Real estate always lags the stock market. So it starts with stocks, it starts with panic on that side. It affects cash flow depending on what type of business that you're in or where you are economically. And then real estate is also subsected. The number of properties that are being now listed in the last 7 days has been exponentially increasing across North America. Of course, there's not many in-person open houses. I've seen a few people start to do the virtual open houses, and you are seeing real estate move where people are trying to unload and try and free up cash and do those things. But there will be a regression of real estate prices. If you look back historically, and I'm going to even use 2009, when you look at the bottom of the 2009 market, and you wonder, and I'm going to use Ontario as an example, what was the average regression to a home price? Between 10 and 20%, not 50, not 80, but here in Canada, in most parts, we had a much smaller regression. One might say, if you're looking at where the two places are going to get hit the most right now with price regression on real estate, you're definitely looking at Vancouver and Toronto, 2 out of the 5 most expensive per square foot real estate centers in North America. But you have to hang on. Don't fire sale the things that you own if it makes good sense for you to still keep it, and there will be deals for you to pick up as you go forward. We don't think that there's going to be economic recovery overnight. You're looking at you guys coming back much faster than the broad market because you are dentists. We've seen that every time. People will go back to their dentist before they go out and typically pick up an exotic vacation or a new vehicle or other things like that. You and healthcare will recover the fastest. It's always been that way through all the economic downturns. When we look ahead then specifically to things like now risk, we've had a lot of questions on who's paying, who's not paying, how can we claim? So I'll start with, first of all, those of you that have personal disability insurance. So COVID is a covered condition. If you contract COVID and you have fever, you, God forbid, develop some sort of respiratory lung problem that disables you for a significant period of time, or heaven forbid, a permanent period of time, that's a covered condition. But the incidence of COVID is not a disability claim. So I know we had a lot of people asking about that. Disability is protecting you, not your environment around you. There has been, obviously, then the second big fight for all of you was, especially as practice owners, was, hey, my practice is shut down. It's been recommended that I close, and my business has been interrupted. And I do or do not have pandemic insurance. And pandemic insurance, as you know, without going into super detail, certain insurers out there were saying we're going to cover you between $20,000 and $100,000 for pandemic. Huge fight, which is still not completely resolved at this point in time. But we're waiting to see the first claim get paid out. But there's some really, really positive news on the pandemic front. Then, of course, there was a legal release basically from a major law firm here in Canada that said, hey, we have some case law supporting the fact that we believe that we can treat COVID like under business interruption, like a fire, theft, flood, or vandalism. And the interpretation of the courts was such that it looks like there's case law to support all of you being paid for business interruption, which you may or may not also get paid for pandemic. Again, that's a question for the appropriate people to comment on that are professionals in that legal context. That being said, it's really good news for you guys. There's a lot of positive. Azim and I were chatting about this yesterday morning, saying let's not get our hopes too far up, but we think that there's a lot of hope right now that something that was really closed door, it was just about pandemic, this door has now been opened up, and it's opened up real wide. We're going to highly recommend, if you haven't done so, and this does apply to you, that you do have an office and you do have business interruption, you should contact your appropriate company or broker and lodge a claim. And that is the first step in order to create basically some flow of possible return to you from a claim standpoint. The insurance companies that we've spoken to since yesterday when this news came out, specifically on the property and casualty side, they have no opinion on this. They're not commenting on it, nor can they comment on it because it's a legal interpretation right now. Mike Rondinelli had brought up a good point before we had started today's session on is this going to be something that I submit my claim and I'm going to get paid out on this something very quickly, and we're going to give you the strong opinion that it's not going to be a black and white case. You're not going to get paid on this overnight. There's a lot of legalities. I'm going to suggest there may be a fight ahead of you, and it all depends on how it interprets. The best thing you can do right now is, again, open your claim and give it a little bit of time. I know so many of you are under financial stress about your overhead and your bills, and that check is going to go a long way to relieving that. But you have to prepare yourself for the fact that this is new territory. There's an interpretation from a court that basically says one thing. The legal contract by business interruption says something different. So this will have to be sorted out. And I know there's a lot of people in the insurance industry and the legal community right now that are trying to figure this thing out as we go along today and through the weekend. When it comes to the government programs, again, there's four major government programs. The Canada Emergency 75% Plan, which was almost like a second program to the 10% Canada Emergency Wage Program. You've got the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and you've got this $40,000 interest-free loan. I don't want to go into too much detail on the four programs right now because the rules are still not clear. When Mr. Morneau came out in the news or he was supposed to launch on Monday, deferred out to Wednesday. And when the deferral came on Wednesday, we still were running into that issue where your tax professionals and all of us in the community on advice have been looking at it saying, we still don't have clarity right now. So what I'm going to suggest is, I know you'll have a lot of questions about the four government programs. Give it just a little bit of time. In speaking with a couple of the MPs on the economic side, they're suggesting that they're trying their best to work through this over the weekend because they know business owners are badly, practice owners need to know how to apply and what's best for them, and should they be on one program or another program or both programs. So the hope is that sometime early next week to mid next week, there'll be some guidance on that. And then between Azim, Hisham, myself, and all of us, we will do our best to give you a clear in English breakdown of what that looks like and how you should apply for that. But I'm going to defer again and say there's still not enough clarity for us to give you an educated opinion on it. When we look at going forward over here now, I want to talk about practice values. And the stock market is down, as I said, 40 to 90%. If you're in Alberta and you're looking at the price of oil specifically, and you wonder, is this economy ever going to get better for you guys out there being very oil-based and energy-based? It's going to take time. I'm going to make a suggestion to you again when it comes to practice values, though. 4 weeks ago, and some of you know this story, but because it's been continuing now for a number of years, back 25 years ago, you could buy a dental practice for obviously a fraction of what it was, and many of you would just acquire. There was no such thing, or very few startups at that time. And as time went on, there was still enough supply for the demand that was required. You look today, and best guess, 24,356 dental professionals operating in a country of 37 million. Not a lot of dentists. And if you look to how many practice owners, our best guess right now is about 15,000 practices amongst those 24,000 dentists, serving 37 million people. On April 20th, I'm going to get into some very specific numbers about the disruption of dentistry as it relates to provinces and population and so forth. But what you've seen as practice values go to numbers that are inhuman right now. You can't even imagine, as so many of us here on this call have talked about practice values. There was recently a practice that some of you know about that sold basically for 270% of its gross. Numbers that don't make sense from a cash flow perspective, numbers that are dangerous actually. But the number of bidders to acquire and the number of people that want to do a startup is exponentially still growing, and it hasn't gone away. I'm going to suggest to you something different. Interest rates just came down in the last 4 weeks, and they came down significantly. That made the carry cost of a practice loan even cheaper, meaning you've got more room to be able to carry debt longer as you go along. So that helps practice values. If you're staying high touch to your patients, I had a conversation yesterday with a dentist that's actually joined us here as part of almost, near 300 people now online. We said, have you thought about reaching out and touching and talking to your patients personally? Like you, the dentist, giving a call to your patient and checking in on them. How you doing? Are you safe? Are you healthy? And it's not a dental call. It's not a, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you next Friday for your appointment recall. It is touching the people that feed you and your family because they're around right now. It's checking in on your team. I don't know how many of you are actually just making sure that everybody's okay that helps support you. Checking in on your suppliers, even your bankers. I tell you, the bankers, the suppliers, the accountants, the lawyers, everybody that's on a call, there's several of you that are all joining us again today. They are getting pummeled with questions, with being pulled in 16 different directions. And I don't know, I think John Mansour is on this call somewhere over here, and John was really kind, and he sent a message. And I think that day I had about 900 emails, and I was on the phone till about 4 o'clock in the morning between West Coast and East Coast. And John sent me a message, and he said, hey, thank you very, very much. I just want to check in on you and just want to say thanks for like being there and doing the best you can. So I'm going to just say, please take a moment to reach out to your team. And just let them know you're thankful and appreciative of them. So back to practice values. So I'm going to suggest to you practice values aren't going to be coming down in any consequence. You might hear that. Sure, your production is going to be turned off right now through March, April, May, and possibly June, and whatever that period is. Let's say it's 3-4 months. Does that mean your practice value is now eviscerated permanently? Does that mean all those patients that didn't come in for the last 3-4 months aren't going to come back when things go back to normal? Still coming back, same production will continue. And I'm going to suggest in one respect, you have an opportunity to make your practice stronger. The amount of CE that each one of you has access to now, that's free CE. And the time to be able to do that CE, and the time to interact with each other, to be able to say, hey, you know what? It's time, I have time right now to work on my clinical skills, work on my ability to be a better clinician, to be a better leader, to be a better everything. You have this time. It's a gift right now if you kind of look at it. The number of you that I get the chance to talk to that don't have a website, have no social media yet, the ones that have an opportunity now to, again, focus on these details, please take this time. This window might be 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, and then it will go back and it'll be gone and you'll be busy and you'll be like, wow, you know, I wish I did that to, again, make myself stronger. But there's been discussions of people that are saying, hey, I think it's time for me to pick up a cone beam. I think it's time for me to reinvest in my practice. Amazing. One of the first rules that you're supposed to do, and I'm going to tell you the strongest practices in this country, if we use the 80%, 20% rule, 20% top, they're marketing more now. They are spending time and money to market. And they're re-engineering the way they look and feel to their patients, their brand, their patient experience, all of those things. Don't be afraid of spending money, and certainly spending time right now on the marketing efforts of your brand. The return on investment for you is limitless. A question was asked recently again on what is the value of a patient today? And I'm going to suggest to you the value of a patient on aggregate average is about $21,000. So if I come in and Jake is my dentist and I'm a new patient for him, the minute I walk into his office, I'm on average aggregate worth $21,000 to him. How? Well, if I look at the life cycle of me as a patient over the next 20 years, I might be getting some root canals, my recalls, you'll take care of my impacted eights, and all the way through the process between some implants and veneers and everything else, all of a sudden, wow, that added up to $20,000. Not hard. And somewhere down the road, 20 years from now, you decide to sell this wonderful 20-year relationship and transition this relationship to the next dentist that's coming behind you, the associate, your family member, the new purchaser. I'm worth today $1,000 as a chart. So I take 20 years of production and $1,000 of saleable value. There's my $21,000 of economic value. What if when we're done with this time, and certainly you have this time to be able to potentially help, again, onboard people to say, we will look forward to seeing you when things go back to normal. If you get 10 new patients during this window of time and when we return, that's about it's roughly speaking, $210,000 of economic value. $210,000 for 10 people, if you measure it. That's how valuable this time is right now for you. So patients aren't going away. Practice values certainly aren't crashing down. Things will go back to normal, but it's so important, again, to work on them. Those of you, again, that are, there's a number of you that are 2020 grads coming up right now, and you're saying, well, no one's really interviewing or hiring. I'm going to suggest to you that there's an opportunity for you to now use a platform like Zoom to be able to do virtual interviews. And what a great time, because a lot of those principals that have very little time right now and their managers have an opportunity to interact with you in a meaningful way, even though it's digital. So reach out to people and take this opportunity right now to focus in on the fact that life's going to go back to normal, so you continue on that way, and don't stop looking for your positions. There is going to be a bit of a slowdown, of course. So the people that potentially were going to say, hey, I need my staff, I need my associate, all back to normal, I'm going to use the date of July the 2nd, that will be slower. So it might be simply that you're not going to start your associateship or have all of your team back right when we open back up. And there might be a lag. I'm going to suggest to you that the lag, best guess right now, is going to be taking us into September. And that'll be based on the 3 type of patients I was talking about earlier, where we look at and say, okay, when will they feel comfortable and when will it be normal flow again? And that's when, again, you'll need your associate in full flow and when you need your team in full flow. Going back to when we come out of this economic recession that we're in right now, many guesses. Is this a 6-month event? Is this a 12-month event? Is this a 25-month event? And of course, it's too early to say at this point in time because economically, things are completely altered. But I'm going to suggest to you that there's been a lot of economic discussion about the economy specifically going back to some kind of normal in fall of 2021. It won't be this year. So you have to get your mindset around the fact that it is going to take a little bit of time to do that. Looking at clock here, now we're at 12:41, so I'm going to just kind of give you some closing thoughts from there, from this, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. You guys have, and I'm talking about every single person that's on this webinar today, you have a choice. You got a couple of choices, but I'm going to specifically say you have one specific choice. And I'm going to say your first choice is to say, be happy right now. Don't let the stress of this situation get you down and create fear. Those of you who are specifically in this industry, we're in one of the best industries, and I'm saying collectively all near 300 of us are in one of the best industries on the planet. Those of you who are dentists represent the top 1% of income earners on planet Earth. The top 1% of the planet's income, you're in that 1%. And that's not changing. It's just time. It's just a deferral of that. The opportunity when we look at saying, okay, once I get through this period of time, will I be okay with my health, my assets, my happiness, all those things? It's your choice. You have to choose it though, right now. And you're blessed. Every single person that's sitting on this call right now is absolutely blessed in the context of we're all healthy right now. We hope, fingers crossed, and we're safe. And if you just look a little bit around you and you see the people that are struggling, healthcare-wise, financially-wise, and their road is a little bit darker and a little bit murkier, and you'll realize and kind of say, hey, it's not so bad for me. And I have a responsibility and a gift that I'll be able to give back as a team to all those patients that are waiting to see me. And you literally, social distance-wise, wrap your arms around all of those team members, those partners that you have, your friends, your family, and your patients, and know that all's going to be good when we get through this. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Ish, Azim, and the rest of the gang, thank you so much for tuning in on this Friday afternoon, on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Hope we all get to go for a little walk today. And I really appreciate the time, and I hope that I can share more with you on April the 20th.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vic. That's always, you're always a wealth of knowledge and a beacon of hope in so many different ways. So thank you so much for that. That was very informative. Our first question comes from Rawad. Rawad asks, any point of applying for CERB if you're already working emergencies at the office?
Great question. I'm going to defer on that one over there right now. And Rawad, and I know this will be a common question over there. I apologize. I want to kind of leave the technical specific aspects to an email early next week on getting into that. So if I may defer that question, please, early next week.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into the second question. This was from Diego Diaz, who asked, with the Fed and the BOC adopting more and more quantitative easing, and with interest rates so low, what's the likelihood of increased inflation and even stagflation as seen in the 70s?
That's awesome. Great question. Thanks, Diego. I hope everything's going really well out there in BC, man. Look, it's an interesting question because we're for sure going to get inflation out of this. The United States just pumped $2.2 trillion into the US economy. And there's been some suppositions over here that we're looking at them printing and putting in more. There were some ideas, again, these are just best guesses right now from certain economists, that we could be looking at 4.4, 6.6, 8.8 trillion dollars, being pumped into the US economy. Because of just how deep the cuts are, because it's global right now, as far as the complete seizure of the economy. So we are going to get inflation. There's no way of stopping this. When you have zero rates, and you have this much printed money, for sure we're going to get it. They're going to do their best to try and keep rates low for long as much as possible. Because of course, if you start jacking rates up too fast, it's going to annihilate the economy. So there will definitely be inflation. How high will it get? I don't think we're going to get into a situation like you've seen in the 1982 example I gave you, where you're dealing with 17, 18, 19, 20% inflation. The Fed has a lot of control with economic and fiscal stimulus. So they're going to do their best to give us a soft landing out of this thing.
Amazing. The next question is from Mien. Mien asks, will you get paid out for practice interruption insurance if your practice is open to treating emergencies?
So it's a great question. We don't know, to be honest with you, because if you look at it from a legal standpoint, every contract is slightly different. So let me use an example of, let's pretend that our practice had a flood, and I'm dealing with a 2,000 square foot space, and all of my ops got flooded, and my equipment and computers got fried. But in my reception area, I could set up an operatory, and I could triage emerge just in that area. there's going to be massive practice interruption. There's going to be massive loss of income, even though I've got the ability to open and just do a little bit of dentistry. Let's pretend it's 1/10 of my normal production, but I'm still open and I'm still doing it. Different contracts have different definitions around this. And there's a definition of actual loss sustained, which a number of you will have that type of a definition inside your practice interruption. And in that context, basically, the short answer to Mian's question is yes, we believe that even though you're open, they're going to look at your actual loss sustained as a result of the incident, and you would get paid. Subject to interpretation.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much for that. So we have a question from Michael Horniak, who asked, he tried to open a claim yesterday through CDSPI for practice interruption as per your comments. And they told him that they would only open a claim for the pandemic clause, not the general one. So any advice on that matter? Yeah.
Because the release from this national law firm was so fresh, certainly I had released out a small amount of information yesterday talking about the 7 steps to opening a claim. When we talked to certain claims adjusters yesterday, claims intake people, they had no idea what we're talking about. Like the companies themselves don't even know whether or not they're going to accept this, because from a pure black and white issue, many of them are saying, hey, this is not covered. So we can't treat COVID like a fire or theft or flood or vandalism, even though the court interpretation of this one article over here specifically says that they will, and there's case law supporting it. So Mike, to answer your question over there, I would document the fact that you contacted CDSPI and Aviva Insurance on such and such date. If you have the name of the person that you notified, I would certainly write that down. If you don't have who that was and when it happened, please call again and make a note of the person, the time, and what happened. Log that basically as proof that you tried to open the claim.
Absolutely. Just want to make another quick announcement here. If you want to reach out to Vic, please feel free to email him at vic@jindalfinancial.com or give the office a call at 519-667-1220. The next question is from Sean. Sean asks, any thoughts on employee dental benefit plans in the near future?
So if I can just clarify, maybe I'm going to say like having your employee, I'm sorry, I understand the question here. So just general patient population that has dental benefits basically. Sure. I'm going to take certain industries in certain provinces. So right now I'm going to use an example of Alberta again. The oil sector has been completely and totally decimated out there when you look at what's happening with this global price war in energy. I was speaking with a good friend of mine yesterday who does employee benefits for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small and medium-sized firms in specifically Calgary and Edmonton. She said over half of her clients have called to cancel their benefits as time goes on over there because those companies may or may not survive. So again, there is some bad news over there in the sense, sure, benefit plans are going to get cut depending on where you are and what industry you're in. Here in Ontario, of course, I mean, we'll look at a general statistic, but about 84% of patients have some form of insurance in the province of Ontario. And if we look at how much regression there's going to be to benefit plans going forward, I'm going to just take a complete stab when I look back at past history and suggest to you that somewhere around 14% of those people will lose their benefits. You'll still have about 70% of your current pool still insured.
Excellent. So I think that actually answers also Sean Pierre's question about employers cutting back on dental benefit coverage when we're getting back. So we've managed that question as well. So this question is from Dr. Geeta Gautam. Hi, Geeta. Could you offer some sources on how we can use marketing effectively at this time?
Absolutely. So, of course, you've got a very wide open range of things to pick from. So I'm going to suggest to you, I'll rhyme off 5 things. So website construction and development. So if you have a practice and you do have a website, I'd relook at that website and say, is this a website that ranks well on the Google search? And are you using Google search engine optimization effectively or at all even to, again, create some growth over there? the effective use of things like Google AdWords and Facebook ads and IG ads and Instagram ads. So if you're not comfortable with using web technology or again social media technology, there's a variety of people you can message us offline that we can connect you to that are experts in that particular area that can help you on that field. So.
I've also posted the link to, I made this announcement earlier, to Dentistry Disrupted. Vic was generous enough to release all of his TED Talk style talks from a couple of months. So from individuals like Azim Sheikh, Michael Rondinelli, Jake Carrier, Melissa Calloway, and so many more individuals. So please feel free to tune into the YouTube channel there and check those out. The next question comes from an anonymous source, and the question is, any recommendations on stocks?
Great question. I'm not going to be specific to any particular stocks on this particular forum and platform because I don't think it'd be appropriate to comment specifically on any particular equity or fixed income. I'm just going to maybe answer the question with a little bit more generality. You want to be right now what we call a value play. So there's I'm going to try and condense my answer down in about a minute or two. There's three different ways of investing, and it's always been the same three ways. You can be a growth investor, a momentum investor, or a value investor. And the growth investor is saying, hey, I'm going to invest in this great company because it's growing its earnings and it's got a great long-term future. The momentum investor is the person that's saying, I'm going to invest in this stock or this company because everybody else is buying it. I love the way the momentum is going of this particular brand or company, and I want to get in on the ride. And then we're going to use our favorite value investor of all time, Mr. Warren Buffett, who has been hoarding over $125 billion in liquid cash, saying, it's not my time to invest. I'm going to wait for a better buying opportunity and invest when there's maximum pessimism for people. And it depends on, so my answer is it depends on what kind of investor you are. Are you a growth investor, a value investor, or a momentum investor? This is definitely a value investor's market now. There's been tons and tons of momentum over the last 11 and a half years. There's been lots of growth. And the value managers and the value stocks have lagged behind. So huge opportunity to pick up great deals. I'm going to maybe refer to a few sectors. The Canadian banking industry has been quite pummeled. And if you look at some of the recent announcements from the CEOs, they've come out and said, we're not laying off any employees. We're absolutely not shutting down any branches. We have a ton of money on our balance sheets, and we're good to go to help Canadians. You're looking at some blue chippers, of course, in the United States and globally right now. Again, I don't want to use specific names of companies, but I can tell you that there are certain companies right now that have been sold off, not at -30, but I'm going to suggest to you at -50 to -90%. And they're giving them away. And if you look a little bit deeper and you realize that, wow, this company's not going anywhere. They're really, really, really strong, but people don't know the difference between good company and bad company. That's where the value pick is going to really help you. You can make some great money. One other added point to this, I know there's not that many of you that are going to want to be in this particular position, but this is going to be one of the greatest times potentially that happens very rarely in life, where you have an opportunity to take some of your liquid cash or some of your leveraged opportunity of capital and pick up some amazing companies, not stocks. I'm going to refer to them as companies at crazy discount prices. And in 134 years of history, which I'll show you again in a little bit more detail when we talk again on April the 20th, you'll see some charts that show if you were strong and resilient, how wealthy you can become through this.
I'm going to add a little bit to that. I'm just going to continue on to the next part of the question here as well, Vic. And basically, when it comes to your thoughts on when the bottom is going to hit, and if you also don't mind as well explaining in the past how you've seen, L, U, and V-shaped economies. and and stock markets when it comes to recession. But now everybody in the economic world is talking about a W-shaped recession or a W-shaped market that may happen. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. He's just remind me, the first part of the question before we get into the different types was?
Basically, where's the bottom?
Yeah, good question. So let me start there. Nobody knows the bottom. And if somebody says, oh, I know exactly when this is going to bottom out, boy, they'd be beyond billionaire status. So if I defer to Warren Buffett for a moment, he himself, as the president and lead of Berkshire Hathaway, doesn't know the bottom. So we're going to guess, because that's all that we can best guess. If I look right now at this exact moment, I'm going to put this up over here for everybody. See all the red? Basically, that's the meltdown right now at 12:57 p.m. here. It's bleeding right now on Friday afternoon, and it's all negative. And no matter what you look at and what you pick over there, there's a couple of greens over there. I'm not going to say what company that is that's going up, but for the most part, it's bleeding. It's bleeding real hard. You've seen some of the most violent swings in the stock market since the 1920s. You'll see some days that it's gone up 12%, it's gone down 12%, all in one day. Our guess, although this is of course not a pure science, is that as you see the rate of panic increase with the COVID number of reported cases and the death toll, which is inevitable, you could see further sell-offs in the market. As you see the number of unemployed people that in the US literally went from 3.3 to 6.6 million Americans and climbing like crazy. As you see the strain specifically on healthcare systems, and certainly the US healthcare system, it will potentially create more panic, more anxiety. As we're longer through this, the economic impact is going to force people to sometimes liquidate stocks and bonds that they don't want to. And it's also going to create some opportunities again for bottoming out. If you look at the last 134 years and you say, where was the bottom in the past? Again, in generalities, I'm going to say 30 to 40% was really, really, really bad. When we get to -20, it's a full-blown correction. We're way past -20. We're into that -30 and in some cases -40 to -90. If you saw -50%, that would be horrific, and we could see that in the next 48 weeks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Vic. So we have Atiyub Ahmed, who asked, for individuals who are going through business interruption insurance with Intact and their claims have been actually closed, does it still keep an appeal process open that would allow revisiting the claim if courts rule in the favor?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And there's a 2-year appeal process to that, basically. Or I shouldn't say it's an appeal process. You've lodged it. You've got 24 months from there and basically to reopen that. So big window of time. And I'm going to stress again, we highly encourage each one of you to lodge it, even though they've closed that. Take a ticket number, take the name of the person and the time you've spoken to them, and document that.
Excellent.
Okay. I have another question from Afshak, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer this one too, Vic, but he asks, assuming that the present employees are on EI, is it possible to hire new employees at a much lower rate / minimum wage to conduct some admin work / reorganization / cleaning up, etc. At the office, and so not to have to pay the hygiene wages, etc., and then be eligible for 75% of the benefit as part of the federal emergency program towards the new staff?
Got it. Amazing question. Unfortunately, I'm going to defer over there because of the technical nature of what it is. And I'm going to say I would highly recommend deferring to your legal professional that specializes in employment law. You just want to be mindful and careful of constructive dismissal and some of the legalities around that, where your current employees aren't given equal opportunity compared to a new employee that you've hired at a cheaper wage. So I would say proceed with caution until you have a professional legal opinion and an HR opinion on it.
Yeah, and if I may chime into this one, I would say don't proceed, not even with caution, don't proceed until you get consultation from your HR team. Just because I think there's a bigger problem here if you go ahead and hire somebody else and you've laid off all of your other employees. So my recommendation as well is, as Vic said, talk to your legal team or your HR team on this one before you do anything.
Excellent. So we have a question from Bob, who was asking, would you buy U.S. oil at this point? Oil is pretty much at an all-time low, and then he followed that up with some other stocks like Zoom, 3M, Nestle. Again, I'll leave that up to you.
Sure. So let me comment on oil for a moment, and then I'll jump to again, I don't want to get into specific names like that, but I'll certainly comment to those as a sector. So if we're looking at oil, for those of you that might be familiar, what's happened is that I call it the OPEC families of the world over there. So OPEC basically in Saudi Arabia controls much of the oil supply for the planet. And how OPEC sets prices, so oil prices get set around the world. The cost of production for a barrel of oil in Alberta, one might suggest to you, is over $40 a barrel. And right now, when you look at the global price of oil right now, you're looking at it trading around $20 a barrel. And it's become so unprofitable that the companies, again, I'm here in Canada, like Alberta, they can't afford to pull it out of the ground. It's too expensive. Not when you're selling it for 20 bucks on the global market. So Saudi Arabia and OPEC, along with the other oil powerhouse with Mr. Putin out in Russia, decided that they were going to have some fun. And 3 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, as we came into one of the greatest healthcare crises in human history, they decided to turn the taps on and flood the world with oil. In a time when most of us are barely driving our car and factories are shut, the flow of oil is flooding out as if it's Niagara Falls right now. And that is absolutely and completely dropping the price of oil into dangerously low territory. What's that mean? It means that the small and the mid-sized companies are going to get squeezed out of this market, and you could have consolidation or bankruptcy in that sector. So you want to be careful right now, because the small and mid-sized producers are going to be under so much capital and overhead pressure to survive this, and there may not be the same amount of bailout money for them. So proceed cautiously. I think the longer-term outlook for oil is tremendous. I know when people talk about the electrification of automobiles, and we look at hybrid technology, we are a long, long, long way away before we get the world off oil. Some might suggest to 2050, which is a pretty good year to start to think about again, where we get to more adopted use of clean power. So I think oil is an amazing play. It's going to be highly volatile in this road ahead, especially going through the economic cycle. And I wouldn't necessarily overweight your position in it unless you want the risk appetite. The second part of that question was companies like Zoom, tech companies, and things like that. If you look at what's happened with the stock price of Zoom, of course, it's climbed like crazy. And there's a lot of companies like it where people are looking to say, hey, has the world shifted to this level of communication? I'm going to suggest to you, we will fundamentally all, forever from this moment on, communicate differently now. You will communicate through digital platforms differently. I had my first grocery delivery a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, to our home, and unbelievable convenience for about $3.99. Sure, the world's going to change, and there's companies that are going to be very good adopters to it. You want to be careful, of course, about the momentum wave, where you're now buying into companies that their earnings and their long-term stock price doesn't support what you're picking up. So be value-minded.
Good answer. The next question is from Dr. Nuha. She asks, what is the potential impact of the current circumstances on our RSPs?
Great question. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying about 45 minutes ago, in the sense of you have three choices. And I'm going to use the example of the $100,000 again. If you had 100 grand and it fell 30%, you were down to 70, you could have sold at 70,000, and now you've realized a true loss. But if you own great companies, blue chip companies, companies that are making money, they're safe, you know they'll recover. As I said, between 3 and 25 months has been the recovery period, between the shortest and the longest in the last 100 years for it to come back. So if you just hang on, the 100,000 you had that dropped to 70 has come back to 100. You just have to hang on, as long as they're good companies. And if you bought when it's negative 30%, so I'm going to use an example. there's a particular, I'm going to use a bank example. There's a particular bank here in Canada that stock price a month ago was $109. And a week ago, it fell to $56.97, all in 4 weeks. And this particular bank is extremely solid. It's paying an extremely strong dividend. As I said on the news, they just come on and said, we're not cutting our dividend. We're not closing down any branches. Yet the stock is down from 109 to 56. Do we believe that this 132-year-old Canadian institution is going bankrupt? Nope. Do their balance sheets look good? Yep. What if you bought it at $56? I'm not saying you buy it today, but what if you did? Do you think that there's a chance sometime in the next 25 months, 36 months, 48 months, that it might go back up to $109? And if it does, you just made a 100% rate of return on your money. So I think the RSPs, depending on what you own and what you have, they're not going anywhere. It's just time now.
Excellent. Great question. So we have a question from our good friend, Jake. So Vic, could you please speak about new practice owners and newer grads about investing in stocks and or buying a house versus holding off on all of that currently, given the situation, of course, and paying down all personal debt first?
Great question, Jake. So let's talk about house and then we'll come back to the stock market again. So if we look at the housing market, I'm going to suggest to you that there's 0% reason for it to go up from here, and there's 100% reason for it to go down from here. And you'll see that already. If you just, wherever city and province you live in, if you're tuning in from the US or Europe right now, you're seeing complete and total regression, although it's not been aggressive regression, but you will continue to see that. The number of new listings in the last 14 days is getting stronger and stronger. And as I said, there's no open houses right now. So people that want to open up some liquidity, you will be able to make some lowball offers depending on what the situation is. There's other assets like commercial buildings, land, and so forth. They're not flooding the market yet, and they may not, because the people that have some of those assets don't want to give them up because they know that we're going to come out of this in time and they're not going to fire sale some of that hard real estate. But the short answer is, do I believe you're going to get a better deal on real estate 12 months from today than today? Absolutely. Now, when it comes to investing and picking up a stock or a bond or certain things, and I know we've spent a little bit of time talking specifically about stock opportunities, there are tremendous credit opportunities in the bond market. There are companies that have absolutely bulletproof abilities to pay their debt that you can get fixed income returns on today that have gone from 4% to 12%. And this is unbelievably safe return for some of the companies that we're talking about. So it's not just stocks. There's credit opportunities. Think of it as a GIC on steroids, basically, right now. These opportunities don't happen very much in our lifetime. Again, the last time was 11 and a half years ago. So if you're a current student, you're a new grad, most of you are buried in debt. You've got, for so many of you, your $350,000 line of credit is at $349,000 today, and you're hanging on to be able to get that macaroni and some cat food to feed that cat. So trying to get through this by saying, hey, let me take on some more leverage to be able to potentially make some return in the stock market or the bond market. Be careful. You've got your whole life to build assets and make money. And I promise you that every one of you, specifically that's a dentist on this line right now, is going to be exponentially wealthy. So you don't have to feel like you have to lose this opportunity. Don't give up your liquidity and your cash flow. And paying off debt is always wise. And if you have an opportunity to save a little bit of money for your retirement, great. But think of it more like a long-term savings route as opposed to short-term one.
Awesome. And Chris Shee from Manitoba asked the same question. So Chris, I hope that Vic answered that for you. If he didn't, please privately message me and we can go ahead and get some more clarification. Our next question is from our friend John Mansour. He asks, since we have a great deal of time on our hands, do you recommend any good reads on investing/finance? And then the intelligent investor question mark.
Great question. There is so much content, of course, for you guys to read as far as books and online content. It depends on where you are, in the education of investing and certainly market cycles and so forth. I'm going to suggest to you that, and I'm going to paraphrase something that Mike Rondinelli and Heshif sometimes refer to as YouTube University. And there is so much amazing content on YouTube University. If you want to direct message me specifically on Instagram or on LinkedIn, or certainly to my email address, I'd be happy to send you some links of some of my favorites that are available on YouTube. And I love some of those great articles and stories that you can interactively take. And I would almost suggest those over even reading a hard copy book. So happy to share some of those great links to you guys for anybody who wants to.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great. So we have a question from Mohammed Al-Sharif. So in essence, what he's asking is that if you're practicing as an associate with a health professional corporation, and now obviously there's no work, there's no income coming through that HPC, and you were paying your spouse a monthly salary, is she eligible for the SIR benefit?
Yeah, the short answer is our strong belief, yes. I'm going to comment on that again when we do the release next week, as soon as we have the guidance from CRA. But to give you a black and white answer, yes. If your spouse is, again, I'm going to use this definition under the TOSI rules, tax on split income rules. If your spouse is working on average 20 hours per week, and this applies now to if you're the dentist, your spouse, and your parents, or your children over age 25. If they're working at least 20 hours per week within your practice, then absolutely, and you're paying them a fair wage or remuneration, specifically a wage, a salary wage in excess of, I believe it's $5,000 for calendar year 2019, then you would be eligible. I know there's some tax professionals that are on the line here today, and others in the country that have insured, I guess you could say, to make sure that you're qualifying for the maximum eligibility of all programs. So I think it's critical to say that we have to still follow the TOSI guidelines of saying that is the spouse specifically still eligible for income splitting. If you have a pure associateship and you don't have a practice that you own, and you are suggesting that your spouse is working 20 hours per week administratively, it's our belief that there's a lot of audit risk to that. And we would highly advise you consult your tax professional before you continue that practice.
Awesome. Ashley asks, following your response to Jake and Chris's question, you mentioned 12 months. Would you suggest waiting 12 months for purchasing real estate, in brackets, principal residence or commercial? If we had been actively looking before this, if we bought within the coming months, is that unwise?
No, not unwise. I think it's a great question. So let me break it down into commercial real estate and then residential real estate. So let's talk residential first. If we look again 4 weeks ago, I know in Azim's backyard in Brampton, there was a situation where there was a small subdivision that had opened up that had 25 lots, and they were building little tiny 3-bedroom slivers of a home on it. 2 bedrooms, I should say, of a home, not even 3. And what people did very recently is they had pitched tents and pup tents, and they slept in the mud in front of the sales center a week before the lots came up for sale. And people were sleeping in the mud while it's raining and snowing so that they could be one of those 25 chosen people to spend a 7-figure amount of income for an incredibly small house in Brampton. And I'm going to suggest to you that those 25 people right now might be thinking twice about what they just bought 4 weeks ago. So it only makes sense that prices will regress. You're already seeing it. This is not something that I'm even saying is predicting to happen 12 months from now. It's already started right now, and it will continue. In every economic cycle before this, the exact same thing has happened. But if you're looking for 50% off on a house and so forth, unless you're super lucky, you won't get those sort of deals. But you will get cheaper, and you'll certainly have more opportunity. And certainly when it comes to new construction, materials and labor are definitely getting cheaper to the point where you'll be able to construct at a cheaper price and not necessarily pay the premiums. If you're looking at commercial now, whether it's a startup lease space or you're looking at purchasing real estate to house your dental practice or any other business, There's not much of it available. That's a separate topic that we can get into, but if you're saying you want the prototypical recommendation of doing a startup or a lease space, and you're looking at that, I want 1,500 to 3,000 square feet of space that I've purchased or I've leased. I'm looking for hypothetically main floor. I'm looking for medical dental zoning. I'm looking for parking. It's still a tough nut in almost every major city in this country. And really, really, really tough still in Vancouver and Toronto and so many other major cities in this country. So I'm going to suggest to you, if you're in the search and you found that piece of real estate commercially that you love, or it's your dream house and you love it and you found it, don't let that stop you, because you as dental professionals economically will 100% ride this thing through, and your borrowing abilities are off the charts. So financing some of those things has tightened up a little bit in speaking with some of the 5 major banks. So make sure you have a financing condition and you've partnered with your banker to make sure that they understand what your business plan is. But no, I wouldn't stop looking or proceeding with startup and or expansion.
Excellent. Great answer. So we have a question from Jazz, who says, great talk, Vic. How will lending, borrowing from banks be impacted for things like home and practice purchases in the future?
Yeah. So right now I can suggest to you different banks have taken a different viewpoint on this. If we look at, again, the 5 major banks here in Canada, some of them have tightened up their lending, specifically given the fact that all of you are not cash flowing right now or creating new cash flow. And I'm going to really suggest to you that each bank and each banking institution is looking at this with a different lens. It really is greatly varying right now. But on the whole, they're a little bit hesitant to give you a lot of residential money right now, worrying about your ability to cash flow it. But because this is probably, with a lot of hope, going to pass by in the next, 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, it's not a lot of time to wait for the bank to reapprove you.
Okay, and I think that ties into Ali's question, which was, would you recommend waiting a little while longer before getting into the market? And I think what you had said would be, yeah.
Yeah, we're for a lot of our clients' cash positions that are coming in now, and our clients that are leveraging large amounts of capital and so forth, we're still waiting right now. We're of the belief it'll just get a little bit worse as the COVID curve and the death toll increases and economic pessimism increases.
If you haven't done so already, just a friendly reminder to make sure that you type in your name and email address. That way we can reach out to you for your CE certificate and also email you of our upcoming talks. I've also put the link in for our upcoming talk, which is on April 14th at 12 p.m. with you're the one and only Dr. Azim Sheikh. The next question, Vic, comes from Dr. Nuha Balbaki. She asks, is it true that banks can pull out our personal line of credits at any time? In other words, do they have the right of doing that without getting back to us?
So the legal answer to that, as I understand it from contract law, I'm going to make a suggestion to you, but please don't hold this as gospel truth right now and defer to your banker. Is that yes, they can. It is they do have the contractual ability to pull your line of credit or your loan at any point in time and call that facility. I'm gonna make you a strong suggestion, Nuha, on this one, that I don't foresee that happening at all. Like if I'm gonna guess of the likelihood of that happening between 0% and 100%, I'm gonna call it negative 50%. I think there's very, very slim to none chance of them doing it. They don't need to. In fact, I'm gonna suggest the complete opposite. The banks have extended their hands out to say, we would like to defer your principal payments for 6 months on your loans to principal, residents, and your practices. We'd like to give you the new $40,000 benefit with some forgiveness inside of that at 0%, top-ups to lines of credit. They've been actually quite the opposite. They're giving people credit as opposed to taking it away. And there's enough money in the system out there between the bank's balance sheets and the federal government's willingness to make sure that they're supporting people through this process that I wouldn't lose even 1 second of sleep over them calling credit.
Excellent. So we have another question from Atub, who asks, would you recommend focusing on ETFs versus individual stocks?
Great question again. So there's pros and cons to every type of an investment, ETFs included. So with an ETF, you're getting unbelievable cheap management fee, depending on what you pick from the various ETFs that are out there, and it's a pretty big menu of things to pick from. But you have to understand the kind of ETF that you're getting. And there's so many, and they're not all the same. There's a big variable. Are they equal weighted? Are they pure index? Which index is it following? What measuring stick are they using? How often is it rebalanced? Is it a balanced one? Is it a fixed income one? Is it hedged or unhedged? I mean, the list could go on with how different an ETF can look and feel.
Now, Vic, sorry to cut you off real quick. My apologies. Can you explain to individuals who don't know what an ETF is?
Sure, absolutely. Great point, Hish. So an ETF stands, the term means exchange traded fund. And if you look at the very old traditional model, you might say I will individually pick my stocks and bonds, and I'll pick them anywhere in the world, or let's say here in Canada, I'm going to pick these companies, GICs, bonds, fixed income, or stocks, excuse me. If you look at saying what's an ETF now, basically what you're doing is you're buying the index. You're buying, think of it as you're buying, if I'm talking about the US market, 3,333 of the biggest companies that make up the stock market. You're buying all 3,300 of them in different proportions. So when you think of companies like Apple, we call them our FANG stocks, your Facebook, your Apple, your Amazon, your Netflix, those type of companies, because they're so valuable when it comes to their stock market capitalization, they represent often the greatest point of the index. So they're overweighted. So there are pros and cons. I guess I'm going to simplify it down to there's pros and cons of index investing and ETF investing. If you buy an index, that doesn't mean you're getting the companies you want. So if you have a great love for a particular company that's been tremendously beaten down in this marketplace, maybe it's a travel industry company like a cruise line or an airline or an energy company for the earlier question about oil, you can create a basket of ETFs to do it, or you might individually stock pick to do it, or you might bring in your private portfolio manager to help assist with that selection. But I love ETFs, but again, this is definitely a stock picker's market.
Incredible. One additional announcement, just once again, just for those who missed it, to reach out to Vic, please feel free to email him at vic@jindalfinancial.com or call the office at 519-667-1220 or 1220. I apologize in advance that I can't ask the questions that Vic has already mentioned about certain type of stocks. What would you invest in at the moment, Vic? So if you have any questions that you would like to ask Vic privately or on an individual basis, feel free to email him right away. I also want to make an announcement for Vic's next talk, which is going to be on Monday, April 20th at 3 p.m. So you'll be getting quite a bit more information of that in the coming days. So please make sure to tune in. Vic, how long is that talk going to be?
We're going to be 1 hour from 3 to 4 o'clock on that first one. It's going to be 45 minutes. I'm going to go really, really deep into a number of talks specifically around the financial aspects of the market and practices and how we kind of give you empirical data on how you come out of this and tips on how to come out of this thing. We're going to do a repeat session at 7 p.m. that day as well. And then we're looking at going live on IG and Facebook. I'm going to stress again that it feels right now there's been a ton of global appetite for that one between Canada, US, and some of our European partners. So I know that register early if you can get on. If you can't get on, I know it's going to be available for re-recording and playback.
Incredible. And just once again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but make sure you check out all of the Dentistry Disrupted videos on their brand new YouTube channel. So just type in Dentistry Disrupted and you'll see close to about eight TED Talk videos. So make sure you chime in if you have the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Azim, do we want to ask Ashfaq's last question?
Yeah, I think let's go for it. So we have, we just got this question from Ashfaq. It says, other than the 40K loan assistance offered by the government, are there any incentives or programs for dentists or practices available to implement measures and technologies in order to advance our practices now and later? So the teledentistry, air sanitizers, hand dispensers, these different types of technologies that can help or programs that can help. Yeah.
For sure. There's another program. There is a short form application right now from the Business Development Council of Canada and the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. Hope I'm getting that name correctly over there for the acronym. So there are tremendous amounts of money on cheap to low interest loans with very short term questionnaire. And what they're looking for is saying, hey, we're going to give you a whole bunch of money, potentially be able to reinvest capital into your practices for all of those things. So as part of this release that we're hoping to put out next week, once we have clarity around the government programs and the rules, we'll make sure that we add that in over there for how you can apply for some of those capital investment loans as well, beyond the 40,000. Excellent.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it over to Hisham.
I believe that is the end of all of the questions. I know that we can, talk about this for so long. You know how it is, Vic. With me, you, Mike, Azim, we could literally, me and Jeff, we can talk about this for days. But one of the things that we're going to do here is that if any of you guys want to chime in by video or audio, we're just going to try this just for a couple of individuals here. So if you just click on your name, you can actually put your hand up. I don't really know exactly how to do that just yet. If you can, awesome. But if not, just unmute your mic or even turn your video on if you'd like to ask a question. And we're going to leave this open for a couple of minutes for anybody that wants to chime in or even say hi before we break out. Anything else that we need to announce here other than our upcoming talk, which is on April 14th? Once again, thank you to all those who attended today. Thank you, Vic, for once again a very informative session. And we look forward to seeing everybody who attended today to our next Zoom talk. And yeah, it looks like we have Sharif who has his hand up. Sharif, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to unmute your mic if that's okay, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Well, I don't have any question. Just wanted to thank you all for your great work today.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharif.
Well, thanks for being here.
So good to hear from you. And I see Vijay Singh and Melissa Calloway and Stephen Diana. And wow, it's what an amazing technology that we can all come together like this on a Friday afternoon. It's amazing to see you all. We're very fortunate.
If anyone else wants to raise their hand, you can just go to the press more on the lower right corner, and then you'll get a pop-up and it will say raise hand in there.
Thank you, Manisha. Any other questions?
I think we have a question from Ashfaq here. Again, it states, if on your CDSP policy, your bank is listed as a loss payable, and if CDSPI or whatever insurance company you have decides to do the payout, is there an implication to this? And what should we do in advance, especially if there's an active practice loan with the bank?
Very good question again. So basically, it's extremely, I'm going to say, common, if not mandatory practice that your financial institution, while you have any form of debt with them on your practice loan, or your home for that matter, but specifically your practice loan, will be basically a named insured or a loss payee, basically. So again, I'm just going to kind of use a simplified example. Let's suppose that your practice, of course, was flooded, fire, theft, flood, vandalism, anything like that, burned to the ground. Your bank has lent you $2 million to buy that building and practice, and it's gone. The bank will have equal rights to that payout, basically, before you just, for example, take the money and take a trip down to the Cayman Islands. So we don't know the answer to that question right now. I'm going to surmise to you that because this is not going to be a situation where we have that total loss and the reconstruction and things like that, there's a financial loss here, not necessarily, and an economic loss, not a physical loss of premise or equipment, that I don't imagine that you have to do anything legally at this stage. And I'm going to suggest to you, there's no bank that's going to release themselves from liability here. So right now it'd be status usual. And I would imagine that, frankly speaking, it's nothing to worry about. When and if we get a payout from under practice interruption and or pandemic from our respective insurers, I believe that money would be paid out for our current losses. And the bank will be more than happy for that intake of capital without taking it from us.
Excellent.
All righty. Well, once again, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you all on April 14th. Remember, we have Azim Sheikh, Kayvon Abazadeh, Stephen Diana, Bian Queck, Jeff Sumner, And also we're gonna wrap it up as well with Vic Jindal for a second talk on April 20th. So stay tuned for those announcements. Have a safe weekend, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you all on the 14th.
I'd like to personally thank Hisham as well, just for organizing and putting all his hard work. Guys, I can tell you this is not easy to put on. So hats off. Good job, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and you as well. Have a great day, guys.
Take care,
Take care,
guys.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Be safe.
Thank you.